Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and to this short time-lapse version of my Bumblebee in soft pastel. It's this month's mini demo over on my Patreon channel, so if you fancy painting along with me, do check out the links in my description. But as always, if you enjoy this here, then please do hit subscribe and check out all of my other playlists. This little demo is on the Canson Velvet paper. They do a lovely dark brown colour and I thought it would really suit this. And it's just 6 by 8 inches, so pretty tiny, and for me these mini demos that I do, they really give me a chance to experiment, to not spend forever on one piece, and sometimes for me that is the key. If I want to have a bit of fun and try some different things, or just relax doing something in between bigger pieces that take a lot more energy and a lot more of a commitment of my time, these little mini demos are such a pleasant relief for me as well. And I think a lot of my patrons also enjoy the shorter projects. So the first thing that I worked on was the background. Despite the fact that it's a small fast demo, there's still lots to be learned from this, and I ended up repeating some of the things that I was talking about in this month's longer tutorial series, which was my recent blue tit on the quince blossoms, and a lot of the same things applied in this little piece, creating a very soft background where you get several layers of depth to it. So you've got the really distant bouquet kind of flowers, and then a more close-up flower over to the left, and then of course here in the foreground we'll have a more detailed thistle flower that the bee is actually sitting on. And within a tiny piece you can still give the impression of a great sense of depth and distance. Now I love painting things like this because it gives me a great excuse to use a really vibrant palette of colours that I don't always get to use when I'm doing things like pet portraits, for example. Sometimes the colours I'm using in those pieces are a little bit more muted. And what I love about painting nature is the fact that nature loves vibrance. So the palette in something like this is completely designed by nature, and I'm just trying to replicate it. So you get the most beautiful combinations of colours, and especially in springtime. It's been a beautiful spring here in the south of Spain, hence why all of my recent demos have been very much spring themed. So perhaps I'll have to think of some summer themes now to follow up on such a busy springtime. But I've had a real blast painting some of the wildlife and the plant life around me this spring. It's been really spectacular, I think because of all the rain that we've had. So this little piece was composed from 2 different reference images, and I just want to mention that because if you look at the bee's wings in the photo reference, they're very light coloured, and that's because in the original photo of the bee, it had white flowers behind it and they were shining through those translucent wings. So if you're changing a background, sometimes you've got several different things to think of, and the translucency of the wings was one of the things I had to consider here. Because of course I wasn't putting white coloured flowers behind the wings. Instead we've got the darker greens back there. So I've got to try and imagine those dark greens shining through the wings. So there's always something to think about if you are mixing and matching photo references. Something I do a lot of the time because I'm not a professional wildlife photographer. I just head out with my camera and I'm always just happy to get the animal or the creature in focus, and I can worry about the background later. In fact, I really enjoy that aspect of my art, being able to edit and create compositions that I wasn't able to photograph, and therefore create a painting that didn't actually exist as a photograph. And I really love that part of the creative process. Now this month for my patrons, I will be releasing all the photo reference related to this demo, everything you need if you want to work along with me. But then on top of that, I have also released lots of extra images of the bumblebees that I photographed, along with some bonus flower images, lots of spring themed photos to go along with this demo. As always, I'm using mostly unison pastels. And you do see just a few pastel pencils pop up here and there, but the majority of the work, as always, being done with the soft pastel sticks. And I had some problems painting this thistle flower. I'm not always the most enthusiastic flower painter, and I definitely find this tricky. Half the problem sometimes is feeling like you don't have the right colours, and I often find that when I'm painting flowers. Doesn't matter how many pastel colours I have, sometimes I still feel like I don't have quite the right colour. So in the demo, I do talk a lot about how I get around that, how I try to layer up a few colours together. And you can do that. You can mix the colours on the paper with soft pastel. And that's especially useful to learn about if you don't have a huge selection of pastel colours. You can still work with a very limited palette. And there's a lot you can do to create certain colours on the paper. And that's certainly what I had to do here with this thistle flower. So that's something I talk about a lot in the demo, and sometimes I think it's just as useful to hear when I'm struggling with something as well as seeing when everything goes perfectly, because obviously when you're learning, quite often things go a bit wrong. And it's good to know that there are ways to battle through and end up with something good by the end. So I'm hoping that lots of my patrons will have a go at this one. The real-time demo is just 3 hours in total. And I had an absolutely lovely time painting that little bee. I really loved the fact that he's covered in pollen. And that is a lovely effect to create in soft pastel. So I hope that lots of my patrons will enjoy this one. There is a whole library of these mini demos which take a bit less time than all of the main tutorial series in my library, but you can browse everything I have in my library on my website. I'll add all of those links in the description below. But thanks again for watching this here. Please remember to subscribe, and until next time, happy pasteling.